1991 wird die S-Klasse Baureihe 140 vorgestellt. Mit ihrem Plakettenkühler und dem auf der Motorhaube.
It was created to assert the supremacy of Mercedes-Benz over all other automotive brands in the world, and it succeeded. The price tag, however, turned out to be too high. The development cost Mercedes-Benz $1 billion, or 2 billion Deutschmarks. Prior to this, no other Mercedes in the world cost $1 billion to develop and build. Today's story is about the legendary billion-dollar car, the Mercedes-Benz W140. It is so great and powerful that it does not take offense at any nicknames. In the early 1980s, Mercedes-Benz was a bit like Hercules after completing all 12 labors, or Alexander the Great, with no more countries or continents left to conquer. In terms of its sense of exclusivity, the German brand was second to none, even Rolls-Royce. While the British brand's exorbitant pathos was based solely on the foundation of historical greatness, Mercedes-Benz actually turned everything it touched into gold. In Stuttgart, they simply didn't know what a failed model was. All of the brand's cars were best sellers, even though they were priced significantly higher than the market. This kind of success can go to your head. At the headquarters, they even caught a virus that could be called customer-orientedness in reverse. In the early 1980s, Mercedes-Benz believed that they were doing people a favor by letting them buy a car with the three-pointed star on the hood. That's why dealers of the brand set their own rules on their territory. A customer who came to the showroom without a white shirt could simply be ignored or even asked to leave the premises. In the early 1980s, Mercedes-Benz was at the top of its game. The company had a reputation for producing some of the finest cars in the world, and its sales were booming. This success, however, led to a certain arrogance on the part of Mercedes-Benz. The company began to believe that it was so far ahead of the competition that it had no real rivals. This attitude was particularly evident in the way that Mercedes-Benz viewed its competitors. The company dismissed Jaguar as a sinking ship, and it saw Audi as an also-ran. Even BMW, which was the closest thing to a real competitor that Mercedes-Benz had, was treated with disdain. However, there was no complacency in the Mercedes-Benz engineering department. When starting work on the new flagship, Stuttgart planned to raise the bar that they themselves had set. The new S-Class was to first of all restart the brand's global design style. The future W140 was also to replace two models on the market at once: the canonical 1/26th body and the epic Big Mercedes, Grosser Mercedes, as the W100 body was almost officially called. The W100 was the first car to be nicknamed the 600 because of its 6.3-liter V8 engine. Even the standard short wheelbase version of the car was over 5.5 meters long, and the long wheelbase Pullman version stretched to over 6 meters. Despite being produced for 18 years, from 1963 until 1981, the total production of the German Rolls-Royce did not even reach 3,000 units. About half of them were distributed among world-class celebrities, actors, athletes, musicians. The other half belonged to bastards of the same planetary scale: dictators, drug lords, politicians. By the early 1980s, the W100 was too old even for superstar status, and Mercedes bosses hoped that the new W140 would not only replace the 1/26th body on the market, but also attract millionaires accustomed to the size and status of the Grosser. Mercedes-Benz took their time developing the W140 S-Class. The project officially started in 1981, and the debut was scheduled for 1989. The company gave its designers, engineers, and constructors a virtually unlimited budget and 8 years to create the best car in the world, the embodiment of the ambitions and supremacy of Mercedes-Benz. And the work began. The Stuttgart designers, led by the legendary Bruno Sacco, had an abundance of time and resources at their disposal, which allowed them to experiment with a wide range of ideas. They explored every possible option, leaving no stone unturned. The sheer number of sketches and designs they produced is staggering, and the variety of stylistic experiments they undertook is even more impressive. One of the most surprising things about the W140 development process is that the car could have looked very different from the final production model. The designers considered a wide range of design options, including some that were quite radical. Ultimately, they decided to go with a more conservative design, but the early sketches and designs provide a fascinating glimpse into what might have been. Among the dozens of design concepts for the W140, many were quite surprising. One particularly striking example was a grotesque variant with a high roofline and a vertical rear window, which was clearly inspired by American design. Another notable concept was a sleek and aerodynamic sketch that resembled a German homage to the Jaguar XJ. This design ultimately emerged from the selection process and was used as the basis for a full-size layout model to determine the interior layout, including seat spacing, legroom, and headroom. The full-scale mock-up was ready for inspection in 1987, and the event ended in confusion. When Project Chief Engineer Wolfgang Peter slid behind the wheel, he banged his head on the ceiling of the future S-Class. Yes, Herr Peter was a tall man, almost 2 meters tall. It is unlikely that drivers of this size would make up even a few % of the potential owners. But look at the situation from the other side. Can you imagine a car that was created as the best in the world to be cramped?
And another thing, when I gun the motor, I want people to think the world is coming to an end! Rum, rum, rum!
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the car designed for the average man, the Homer.
Any questions?
What?
Wolfgang Peter was adamant that the W140 should offer ample space in all dimensions. As a result, the roof of the layout model was gradually raised until it reached a height that satisfied both Peter and Rudolf Hornig, the director of passenger car development at Mercedes-Benz. Unfortunately, this change rendered the elegant Jaguar-inspired design incompatible with the new interior dimensions. To maintain a harmonious overall appearance, the entire design had to be overhauled. As the designers and engineers at Mercedes-Benz continued to refine their vision for the W140, a significant development was taking place elsewhere in the automotive world. In 1986, BMW unveiled the second generation of its 7 Series, the E32, which marked a significant leap forward in terms of technology and design. The E32's arrival caught Mercedes-Benz off guard. The car was met with rave reviews from the automotive press, which praised its innovative features such as the first 12-cylinder engine in a German car in over 50 years, traction control, and xenon headlights. The E32 was also offered in both standard and long wheelbase versions, and it came with a long list of optional features, including a telephone and even a fax machine. It attracted the attention of the public, the automotive press, and of course, potential buyers. And Daimler-Benz, the oldest and most powerful car manufacturer, was not ready for such a turn. Putting on a new executive car only with V8s, as originally planned, meant immediately taking a step below BMW, no matter how perfect the new car turned out to be. And even though the new S-Class was pretty much ready for its debut in 1989, they urgently accelerated work on their own V12 engine, deciding to make it a 6-liter. Troubling news was reaching Stuttgart from across the Atlantic. On one hand, it was just a premium Toyota sedan. What could the Japanese possibly know about prestigious sedans? And yet the Japanese were pouring an enormous amount of money into the F1 project, which would eventually become the production Lexus LS. In Stuttgart, they began to realize that their complacency over the past few decades had blinded them to a direct and obvious threat. The attack, the very possibility of which had seemed unthinkable yesterday, was now coming from two fronts, Munich and Tokyo. The once orderly process of developing the new S-Class descended into chaos as the team at Mercedes-Benz scrambled to keep up with the rapidly evolving automotive landscape. Their goal remained unchanged, to create the best car in the world. But with competitors like BMW and Toyota making significant strides, the pressure was mounting. The engineers at Mercedes-Benz were forced to adopt a more experimental approach, throwing everything they had at the W140 in an effort to stay ahead of the curve. This included not only expanding the interior space or developing their own V12 engine to match BMW's offering. When they learned that BMW was planning a 16-cylinder engine, Mercedes-Benz quickly launched a similar project of their own. The V16 project was ultimately shelved, but the 6-liter gasoline V12 engine, factory code M120, emerged as the most powerful production engine in Mercedes-Benz history, delivering a staggering 408 horsepower even in its standard configuration. This far exceeded the output of BMW's 12-cylinder engine. In fact, it was producing more kilowatts than the BMW's V12 was making horsepower. However, the increased power required a significant overhaul of the braking system, resulting in the development of the BAS, Brake Assist System, which made its debut in 1995 on the updated W140. Extensive test drives at the Nürburgring in 1988 resulted in a costly disaster for the S-Class. The car's suspension, designed to strike an optimal balance between sportiness and high-ride comfort, instead handled like a ship on rough seas. The brakes and tires were undersized, and even more concerning, the instantaneous axis of rotation was not ideally positioned. This axis describes the longitudinal axis around which the car tilts during cornering. The closer it is to the center of gravity, the less body roll occurs. The larger brakes also required larger diameter wheels. Instead of the originally intended 215 by 65 ZR15 tires, the W140 now wore 235 by 60 ZR16 or 225 by 65 ZR16 tires on the 6-cylinder models. Additionally, the wheel arches had to be enlarged, the axle geometry redesigned, and the suspension completely retuned. Development was already well underway at this point, and such fundamental changes cost the engineers a great deal of money, time, and overtime. The introduction of the W140 marked a shift for Mercedes-Benz towards modern component networking. Departing from their previous philosophy of using only as much electronics as necessary. The CAN data bus system connects the control units for ignition, injection, electronic throttle, and traction control in a conference call-like arrangement. This enhances their performance and simplifies the implementation of additional features. Data transfer is 10 times faster than ISDN. This modern networking enables the self-detection of current fault conditions and a limp home mode for continued operation. Not so long ago, the executives at Mercedes-Benz had been relaxed and carefree. Now, they saw threats everywhere, and they responded immediately. Had everyone been talking about the Lexus LS's comfort in the late 1980s? No problem. The W140 would get double-glazed windows and 60 electric motors to operate various comfort features in the cabin. German comfort must be more comfortable than Japanese comfort. So many revolutionary systems were being developed for the new flagship that many were not ready for the debut. Even though the model's premiere was postponed for 2 years, the airmatic suspension was still not fully developed, and they had to settle for active ADS shock absorbers instead. Instead of unfinished ultrasonic parking sensors, which would later make the Parktronic system a household name, the W140 received parking markers, antennas that extended from the rear fenders for easier maneuvering. The Mercedes-Benz W140 was a groundbreaking car that introduced a host of innovative features that are still considered cutting-edge today. These features, which included soft closed doors, heated rear seats with adjustable backrests, variable power steering, and a rain sensor, quickly became industry standards and set a new benchmark for luxury cars. However, some of the other more experimental features, such as the heated windshield washer tank, the cabin heat accumulator, and the linguatronic voice control, were less successful and did not catch on as widely. These features, while innovative in their own right, perhaps were ahead of their time or did not provide a significant enough benefit to justify their cost and complexity. In March 1991, the Mercedes-Benz W140 made its grand debut at the Geneva Motor Show. The highly anticipated car, which had been billed as the best car in the world, was met with a mixed reception. Even the choice of venue for the premiere turned out to be far from ideal. Yes, Switzerland is a haven for millionaires, but it is still Europe, where public opinion is more heated than anywhere else in the world and traditional values are cherished. And the new S-Class immediately displeased the old world. For starters, with its size. Against the backdrop of the W140, all its competitors seemed like shrunken copies of themselves, reduced to a 7/8 scale. The new S-Class didn't fit into a standard garage box, and for transporting it by rail, the loading platforms of freight cars had to be expanded. But the problems with the new S-Class were not just about its size. The whole situation was quite strange. On the one hand, automotive experts were raving about how effortlessly the W140 combined royal comfort with amazing handling. Unwavering confidence on the straight line. Colossal stability in fast corners. For a car of this size and weight, it all seems impossible. This is an ode from Auto, Motor und Sport. And here is a quote from the Swiss Automobile Review. The Mercedes-Benz W140 looks like an armored safe and feels just as safe. Even the smallest details are striking in their craftsmanship and thoughtfulness. Wind noise is not a problem even at top speed. Perhaps even more surprising is that even 30 years later, specialized magazines like Mercedes Classic continue to consider the W140 to be the best S-Class in terms of handling and ride smoothness. The interior was spacious enough to accommodate the entire starting lineup of the Los Angeles Lakers, and the build quality of the W140 could easily put any modern Mercedes to shame. But it didn't help. The best car in the world turned out to be one of the most hated cars of its time. So, what went wrong? Eco-warriors weren't happy. The W140 guzzled gas, especially in the city. With its 20.7 liters per 100 kilometers, or around 5 miles per gallon, in city driving, it was a gas guzzler in an era of rising fuel prices and growing environmental awareness. Plus, its large size and powerful engine didn't help its case. Bad timing for Germany. The W140 hit the market just as Germany was facing an economic downturn after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Many Germans were struggling financially, and the vehicle's high price tag and flashy image made it seem insensitive to their situation. Generation gap. While older buyers loved the W140's luxurious look and status symbol vibe, younger folks, especially Gen Xers, hated it. They saw it as a symbol of everything they were rebelling against: excessive wealth and bad taste. Changing consumer tastes. The W140 arrived just as people were starting to favor more practical and eco-friendly cars. SUVs were becoming popular, and Japanese automakers were offering more affordable and fuel-efficient options. making the W140 seem outdated. The vehicle faced a barrage of criticism, much of which was unwarranted. Before jumping to conclusions, environmentalists should have investigated further. The W140's design, for example, placed a strong emphasis on recyclability, even labeling small parts with plastic grade codes. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency even recognized the S-Class with a Protecting the Ozone Layer award. In stark contrast to its European reception, the W140 was genuinely and wholeheartedly embraced in the United States, the Middle East, and Russia. This S-Class was not only a pleasure to drive and remarkably reliable, but also served as a constant reminder of its owner's status. If cars could talk, the W140 would confidently declare, "Life is good, what about yours?" And it was precisely for this immodesty that the W140 was hated in Europe. History is filled with tales of brilliant individuals who, despite their groundbreaking ideas and achievements, were born into eras that were not yet ready to embrace their contributions. These pioneers, often labeled as ahead of their time, faced immense challenges in gaining acceptance and recognition for their work. The Mercedes-Benz W140, also known as the S-Class of the 1990s, stands as a poignant example of a car that fell victim to its own brilliance. While it was a technological marvel and a symbol of luxury, it ultimately fell short of expectations, leaving its mark on history as more of a disappointment than a triumph of German engineering. The W140's only real drawbacks were a surprisingly small trunk for such a big car and a hefty price tag due to skyrocketing development costs. To recoup these costs, Mercedes-Benz was forced to raise the vehicle's price by 25% above the originally planned amount. This significant price hike put the W140 out of reach for many consumers, particularly in an era of economic uncertainty. But money wasn't the sole factor in the S-Class downfall. This, arguably the best car in the world, wasn't doomed by its price tag. It was the people it wasn't designed for who sealed its fate. Green activists, champions of economic equality, and fiery youth movements, the self-proclaimed conscience of the European Union, took aim at the S-Class. Their message was clear: the car's opulence was an insult to their ideals. Imagine if the W140 were American or Japanese. The criticisms, most likely, would have fizzled out. But in Germany, the weight of kollektive Schuld, collective guilt, loomed large. In Stuttgart, they took the accusations seriously. They viewed the S-Class excessive perfection as inappropriate, like offering champagne flutes and caviar on a life raft. The Mercedes-Benz W140, despite its technological prowess and luxurious appointments, failed to resonate with German buyers, resulting in significantly lower sales compared to its predecessors. This unpopularity led Mercedes-Benz to shorten the production run. Just imagine a car developed over 10 years, only to stay in production for just 7. It's no wonder that the total production of the W140 barely exceeded 400,000. Well below half the sales figures of its predecessor in the 126 body. This episode serves as a reminder that even the most impressive feats of engineering can struggle to find an audience if they're out of sync with the social and political climate. The relative failure of the W140 had far-reaching consequences. For project manager Wolfgang Peter, it meant losing his job, but the other changes were more sweeping. It was the situation with the S-Class that led to a shift in all of Stuttgart's priorities. This is noticeable. No subsequent Mercedes-Benz model resembles the 140. Despite its commercial struggles and polarizing reception, the Mercedes-Benz W140 has carved a unique niche in automotive history. Its imposing size, extravagant price tag, and unwavering commitment to comfort and luxury have cemented its status as a true Mercedes-Benz. In a sense, the 140 represents a bygone era of unapologetic automotive grandeur, a time when cars were not afraid to embrace their size and status